Now settle down, young'uns, and shake the wax out of your ears. I got a story to tell. Now you might recall those three dangerous women I was telling y'all about last time. That ornery quill pusher, Bad News Hannah, who'd made a name for herself, confusticating and discombobulating those no-good lying scoundrels who print what passes for news round here. The girl writes what? That cheroot-smoking, moonshine-guzzling renegade who had a price on her head for aggravating, flustering, and otherwise perturbing the ladies. And Allison, the outlaw who fancied herself a sheriff or some such, who was so out of her mind she thought she was a badger, and who might as well have been one for all the sense she made. It was down at the crossroads over that hill just yonder that their three paths first met, and they knew in the marrow of their bones that they all had business in this here town. You see, they'd been tracking, each unbeknownst to the other, a gang went by the name of the Foyer Gals. A meaner, more deadly nest of rattlesnakes you will never come across. Yet they masked their fell thoughts and deeds behind the veil of the righteous and the false siren song of the just. Who, after all, could possibly argue in favor of the evils of liquor, or the brutish habits of the undomesticated, soused-up men who imbibe, or the continued sufferings of the fairer sex proceeding and precipitating therefrom? But oh, my darlings, our three heroines, they knew those Foyer gals, for all their high-minded jawing and pontificating, was up to no good, and they intended to root out that evil and shine the light of truth on it before it might find a foothold in our peaceful, sleepy little town. And what happened next? Oh, we shall see.
Welcome to Honey Badger Radio Classic number 6. Boys need to learn to respect their betters. This is your host, the moon-addled lunatic, Allison Tiemann, and with me for this installment of HBR Classic and every installment thereafter is Karen Strawn, otherwise known as Girl Writes What, and Hannah Wallen, otherwise known as Oneris Agrippus Lardibatifast. We've decided to get back to the original format that launched Honey Badger Radio once every 2 weeks, just the three of us. And for the faint of heart, a warning, all three of us are old school brawlers, so expect some shouting, maybe a bit of fisticuffs, but we've all checked our iron at the door, so hopefully no fatalities. Today, during today's patron-only after show, which will be after we discuss the items of note, we will be discussing how the University of Certainty has banned Cassie J's documentary on the men's rights community because it, quote, has the capacity to physically threaten women. If you're interested in joining us for the after show, go to www.patreon.com/honeybadgerradio. There are some great perks for patrons, including access to a lively Discord chat where you will be the first to know all the things. All and every Badger thing. Now let's get on with it. A couple days ago, I received a tweet with a screenshot of the Google result for, quote, how to raise a boy right. This was the first result listed on Google. 1, abort him. Men rape. 2, don't breastfeed him because breastfeeding will give him an advantage over girls. 3, teach him to check his male privilege. 4, teach him to be ashamed of his boyish ways. Now, I'm going to stop here because this is a PO. It's a deliberate satire article published on Thought Catalog. Although, to be fair, radical feminists have advanced 1 and 2. Abort boy children and don't breastfeed them. And more disturbingly, because, radical feminists are going to radical, but more disturbingly, moderate feminists have advanced in all seriousness, and with no apparent understanding of how horrible that is, 3 and 4, teaching boys to check their male privilege and to be ashamed of their quote-unquote toxic masculinity. Now, since that tweet made the rounds, Google has removed the summary of the satirical article. Although one does wonder if such an article on girls would ever have found itself as the first result in a How to Raise Girls Right Google search, much less remained the first result for more than an hour after becoming the first result. I'm pretty sure Google would have scrubbed that almost instantly. In fact, the first result for How to Raise Girls' Rights is a Baby Center article titled 10 Tips for Raising a Confident Girl. Because God knows, we need confident girls in societies where satirical articles like that, like abort boy babies, become the first result on Google. Anyway. Looking at the difference between the two Google searches, it occurred to me that it might be interesting to take a look at the very different things society means when it says how to raise a boy right versus how to raise a girl right. Immediately, we all know that how to raise a boy right is to raise him to treat girls right, to teach him how to monitor his actions in order to have a positive effect on the girls and women around him. Don't hit a girl is a big one. Take care of your little sister. Ladies first. Boys are fed a lot of messages that focus on making sure they understand how their choices affect women and girls negatively and to take responsibility for that effect on women and girls. Boys are taught to respect girls. Girls are taught to expect respect from girls. And this isn't necessarily a new thing. Ladies first. This one-way respect creates an obvious hierarchy. Boys are supposed to elevate girls' feelings above their own. But for those of you who might be listening to this and thinking, possibly subconsciously, maybe consciously, who cares? Boys need to toughen up. They need to learn to see themselves in terms of protecting and providing others. They're little patriarchal oppressors, after all. Now consider this. This framing also emphasizes focusing on boys' actions as more meaningful, more impactful, and more potent than girls. You are teaching boys to define themselves by their actions and girls by their reactions to boys' actions. If you want to do that, that's fine. But don't piss on your daughter's leg and tell her it's raining. What you're teaching her is the opposite of the tools she'll need to achieve. It is the opposite of empowerment. In order to create an effective action taker, you have to teach children how to connect their actions to consequences in the real world. So in effect, you are reducing your daughters down to sandboxes for your sons to learn how to be effective action takers. You're saying, son, you're going to become an effective action taker. You need to grow up to become an effective action taker. Use your sister's reactions as training wheels to learn how to connect your actions to consequences so that you can develop in your role as a doer and achiever. Then, just so you can shake off the dew in your daughter's face, you turn around and blame the patriarchy, and you insist you're a feminist interested in empowering girls. And I haven't even touched on what this whole framing does to boys. Now, before we begin the discussion, we're going to read 2 articles from Baby Center. I decided to choose 2 articles from the same site to reduce any possible, variables. One on how to raise boys' rights and one on how to raise girls' right. As you're listening to these articles, watch for how they frame their advice in terms of holding boys to a standard of behavior while protecting girls from the world around them. Okay, Hannah, I'm queuing you up. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
All right, go for it.
So the first one I'm going to read is 10 tips for raising a well-rounded boy. And no, the article is not about making him fat. Raising a thoughtful, well-rounded son can be a challenge. Some boys are slow to pick up on social graces, more interested in video games or Pokemon. Oh God, I didn't even see that. They had to get that in there. I should have looked at that earlier. Slow to pick up on social graces, more interested in video games or Pokemon than people, because like all gamers are socially awkward nerds, right guys? Some are boisterous to the point where they have a hard time focusing. No matter what your son is like, we have 10 effective ways to nudge him toward becoming a happy, well-rounded person. Number 1, give him some responsibility. Following directions and finishing tasks are skills that are often slow to develop in boys. Practice helps. Ask your preschooler to bring you a spoon so you can stir the pancake batter. Assign your grade schooler a regular task to help you take care of a pet. A sense of responsibility will serve him well in school, and your home life will run more smoothly too. Number 2, let him show his emotions. Even in these enlightened times, boys are often expected to stifle their tears and swallow their anger, while girls are allowed more free rein with their emotions. When your son gets upset, let him express himself, as long as he isn't being destructive or completely out of control. Then, once he's regained control of his emotions, you can talk to him about what he's feeling and why. Help him label his feelings, whether it's hurt or sad or angry. Number 3, give him plenty of physical affection. Studies have observed that moms and dads have less physical contact with boys than girls, a trend that starts in toddlerhood. But girls aren't the only ones who need to be held and cuddled. Hugs from mom and dad will help your son feel safe and secure. As boys get older, they're likely to shy away from hugs and kisses from parents, especially when friends are around. But even if they say they don't want it, they still need affection just as much. So you may need to give your son touches and hugs in ways that are a bit more sneaky. A quick hug when no one is around, a rub on the back while working together in the kitchen. Number 4, don't try to shut down his high-revving engine. Boys tend to have a lot of energy, which can get pent up if they don't have enough chances to run, climb, and blow off steam. Just be sure to remind your son that there are times and places, the classroom for example, where he'll need to shift to a lower gear. Number 5, don't worry if he isn't acting masculine enough. Even tough guy fathers have a nurturing side, good ones at least. A little boy who decides to cuddle his stuffed animals is developing skills that will serve him well in adulthood. I'm sorry, I'll explain why that's funny later. Number 6, give him chances to polish his social skills. Most boys don't form close, intimate friendships as easily as girls. They're more likely to play in groups and jockey for leadership. Help your son strengthen one-on-one friendships by arranging play dates for him and encouraging him to share his toys, use his good manners, and generally play nice. Number 7, make music part of his life. Practicing an instrument can give your son a valuable sense of accomplishment. Studies suggest that music lessons can also sharpen a child's thinking skills and improve his memories. If group activities are more your boy's thing, a children's chorus can be a fun musical activity. Another advantage, choruses practice together, so you won't have to enforce practice time at home too often. Taking him to concerts or musical theater is another option if he's willing. Number 8, encourage his interests even if they aren't, quote, boy, end quote, activities. If your son wants to take dance lessons, his friends may tease him, which can be hard to deal with. But if you instill a strong sense of self in your son and encourage him to accept other people's differences, it'll be easier for him to deal with any teasing that comes from being different. So if he wants to take dance lessons, let him. Besides, next year he may very well want to play baseball instead. Number 9, get involved at school. Talk with your son's teacher regularly to find out his classroom strengths and weaknesses. Let her know, too, what you think his strengths are. Monitor his homework without doing the work yourself and encourage him to read or at least listen to a story at least once a day. Number 10, praise the positive. Boy behavior, even when it's age appropriate, can be hard for adults to deal with. And boys get plenty of correcting, reprimanding, and scolding in school and at home as a result. Parents of girls often complain that boys get all the attention in the classroom, but at least at early ages, much of that attention is negative. What can you do? Whenever possible, try to catch your son being good. Let him know that you appreciate his efforts to gain self-control and channel his energy into activities that are constructive and rewarding. So I know I made it sound probably preachier than it was intended, but that article kind of drove me nuts.
Having listened to it again, Hannah, it's pretty
preachy.
It's pretty preachy, and I realized.
You realize what?
I realized there are some subtleties that I missed the first time I read it. A couple things that I noticed is, did you notice how often they were comparing how boys did things to how girls did things and suggesting that we need to make boys' behavior conform more to girls?
Yes.
For example,
Yes.
boys jockey for leadership in their groups. Therefore, we need to encourage them to have friendships like girls by setting up play dates. Instead of understanding that boys just form relationships differently. There is for boys, I think there's a hierarchy, but there also is some emotional intimacy in that hierarchy because boys like to bond while doing things together. So
So apparently I was a boy when I was a kid.
Honestly though,
well, there's one other thing I wanted to say, because I promised I would explain the teddy bear thing. Why I laughed so hard at that. Okay. When I was a kid, I was allergic to the stuffed animals you could buy at the store. Something that was put in them, I was allergic to it. So we didn't have any stuffed animals or anything that my mother didn't make. So when I went to the hospital and they wanted to give me a teddy bear, she couldn't let them give me a teddy bear. She made me a teddy bear. So to be fair, she made my brother one too. My teddy bear stayed thick and plushy and fluffy and firm. The stuffing didn't change in my teddy bear. My brother's teddy bear, all the stuffing ended up down in the legs because he beat the ever-loving shit out of it regularly. It's not cuddling.
Well, okay, but okay, I will say that a lot of the advice in the article is actually, it's not bad advice. Take into account that your boy is going to have more energy and be accepting of that. Take into account that he might not always be gender conforming and be accepting of that. Take into account that he may not be as interested in language as girls, so make sure he reads or at least listens to, and the listens to is important too, a story every day. Not watches one on TV with all of the visual cues and the visual story elements, but just listens to one and hones his verbal skills, right? Like a lot of these things are things, and cuddle him. Cuddle him as much as, as you would cuddle a girl, unless he objects to it, right? And that it doesn't start in toddlerhood when parents begin encouraging boys to play further away from them than they do their girls in toddlerhood. But the letting your boy cry longer and comfort him, soothing him for a shorter time, that starts before boys are even able to crawl. So, I mean, a lot of this stuff is not bad advice, and it is kind of, a lot of it is trying to kind of account for certain biases that parents might have towards their kids based on gender, right? So, I mean, like, I don't have a whole lot of problem with this article. I have a problem with the hierarchy thing that Allison brought up, but I mean, it's really not that bad.
I think it would be better if it was gender neutral.
Yeah, it needs to be.
There isn't any of the good advice that's in this article. There's not one piece of the good advice in this article that is not also applicable to girls. And there is one other thing I would like to say positive about this article. It did not say you should get worried if your son is gender conforming. And that's something that feminists seem to be pushing really hard now, that if your son is too gender conforming, you should be worried. No, you shouldn't be worried about that either.
Yeah,
but they didn't push that. They pushed, don't be worried if he's not conforming to what you think his gender should be like.
But they even said if he wants to take dance, let him take dance. Maybe next year he'll want to do baseball, right?
Although, to be honest, I would argue that dance is not a gendered activity, because
it didn't used to be.
It never has been. I mean, even right down to ballet, you'd hear back when I was a kid, the football players talked about the fact that there were pro football players who took ballet because the exercise they got, the muscles they exercised in ballet, helped them on the football field.
Well, look at
and they realize the men who do the masculine aspects of ballet are extremely strong and have very high endurance. They are some very tough guys.
Patrick Swayze, football and ballet.
Yeah, exactly. So I mean, it's this stereotyping of dance as a girl's activity is kind of silly.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of the issues that come out of this is when you compare it to what they say for girls.
Yeah, that
'Cause this-
changes this article a lot.
It changes the article a lot.
What I do want to say also, though, I think ballet, just in terms of ballet and dance, when you're in the baby ballet stage, right, and the very the young ages, there's not a whole lot of strength differential between boys and girls who are 8-10 years old, right? And it's not until you get into puberty and beyond that it really becomes something where the man is not just graceful, but he's extremely strong, right?
So are the women. I will tell you what, I would not want to get into a fight with a ballerina.
Yeah,
I would not.
But you know,
Be like a spider monkey in two legs.
Yeah, well,
I
but
would
she
feel like getting into a
probably
fight
couldn't
with an
lift you over.
ostrich.
She probably couldn't lift you over her head.
But she could kick the shit out of you.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is that those differentials that set the masculine aspects of ballet apart from the feminine ones, they don't tend to really become a thing until you advance in it for several years and you hit puberty, and then you're able to do all those lifts and all of those other things. So so I can see why in grade school, right, it's seen as a girly thing, right? Because there really isn't a whole lot of difference in the aspects of what it is in grade school, because there's not as much physical difference between boys and girls at that point. So.
Yeah, that's
All right, well,
this kind of draws attention to the way stereotyping certain activities turns out to be pretty stupid in general. Because I mean, anybody who thinks dancers are not tough has never looked at a ballet dancer's toes after practicing up on point for hours and hours.
Yeah,
It's they know pain.
Oh
okay.
yeah.
All right. Well, but also.
Okay, moving
but
on.
do they know the pain of being off topic? Okay.
Yes, they do.
let's do the second article.
All right, let's see. Going back to the beginning, because somehow I managed to find the middle again. 10 tips for raising a confident girl. Look at the difference of that already, right? We have 10 tips for raising a well-rounded boy, but we only want to raise confident girls.
Well, girls don't have to be well-rounded. They're already well-rounded, I guess.
That's body shaming, Allison. Body shaming. Girls usually start off life at full steam. They're early talkers, the social butterflies, the A students. See, I really was a boy. But nowhere between preschool and middle school, but somewhere between preschool and middle school, a confusing blend of new social pressures, greater expectations in the classroom, and mixed signals from society. Do your best, but don't draw too much attention to yourself. You can be anything you want to be, but looking pretty is your top priority. Nobody ever said that. But looking pretty is your top priority. Cause girls to fall behind academically or lose their spark. Here's what you can do to build your daughter's confidence and resilience for the tricky years ahead.
Okay, just stop there. Compare that.
I'm gonna throw up, guys.
Compare that unending stream of victimhood.
Yeah.
To what they said about some boys are slow to pick up social graces, more interested in video games or Pokemon. Some are boisterous to the point where they have a hard time focusing. The entire intro to the first article is about holding boys to a standard. The entire intro of the girls article is about how society fails girls. I don't think the intro to
the boy one was about holding boys to a standard. I think it was a lot about just saying, boys are different, and, they're going to behave and having raised two boys, yeah, they're going to behave in ways that, are difficult and discombobulating, and, but
that's
hey,
the point. Boys are
they're
going
all
to
individuals, and, and you can, but it is like, that article wasn't about crushing their little spirits and making them conform to, it was about helping
I'm not
build.
saying it
It
was,
really about
Karen. I'm
helping.
not saying
No,
it
no,
was,
no.
Karen. Karen, I'm not saying it was, but I am saying it was holding boys to a standard. Boys need to learn to pick up social graces. They need to
Yes,
learn to focus.
or
They
you
need,
should
and
help
that's
them do that.
good. That's
Yeah.
not a bad thing. That's not a bad message for boys to hear, because children do need to grow into an adults. I'm saying
Yeah.
the
The
difference
girl
here.
one was painting girls as
Yeah,
already starting out life as a victim
needs to be held to a standard.
for girls, and
Yeah.
starting out painting girls starting out as a victim. And I'm looking at this, and the more I read this, the more I look at this, the more I realize this was not written for fathers to read. A lot of this stuff, fathers are probably the boy one. They're going through, going, duh,
Yeah.
duh. I already
Yeah.
knew that. Duh. It's moms who have to learn to understand their boys, because they were never boys. They don't know that stuff from experience, and maybe they grew up with brothers, but it's a totally different thing growing up with someone and being that person. And there's a degree to which you understand things, but that doesn't mean that you understand everything from the inside perspective. And where it talks about boys are different, the basically that it's going through and giving a description of, you may not realize this, but this is what boys are like. This is what it's going to be like to raise a boy. That is written for a female to read and understand.
Yeah.
This thing with girls, though, this is written to feed the mother's ego. Everything bad that happened to you in your life, every time you didn't get what you wanted, it was society's fault.
Yeah, actually, that's a great point. And I wanted to point something else out. I'm not saying that the boys article is bad. In fact, I would say of the two, the boys article is actually, when you scrub out all of the any kind of feminist guilt forcing and forcing privilege and all of that shit, a lot of the tips in our society that we give to boys are better than what we give to girls.
Mm-hmm.
And they're better because they are holding, I mean, a child has to grow to become an adult. They have to be held to reasonable standards in order to be able to grow, not unlivable standards.
Yeah.
But that's what they're doing for boys. This is a like, okay, well, your son is going to be this way, but with some nurturing, he can learn to channel his energy, channel his focus, channel his particular interests, and become a better person, or a more rounded person, and more, not necessarily a better person, but a more, stable, a more capable adult. Well, that's a good message. But with the girls, the message that the girls get is that they are fine as they are. They don't have to be held to any kind of standard. And if they fail at anything, it's society's fault. It's society failing them. They're never given the tools to grow that feeling of responsibility, that feeling of having to be held to a standard and achieving that standard.
Number one, give her some responsibility. That would have been perfect if it was the first one,
No, but instead, what did number one? What was
number one is encourage assertiveness. Teach your daughter to express her needs to adults and stand her ground
girls
with
aren't
her peers.
Fucking good at that.
If another child is being mean to her, encourage her to say, "I don't like the way you're talking to me."
Okay, so number one for boys.
Number one for
responsibility.
Boy. Yeah. A sense of responsibility will serve him well in school. Number girls, teach her to tell other kids off if she doesn't like the way she's being treated.
Well, teach your girl to express her needs, teach your boy to be responsible.
Now, if I were to write something like this for parents, I would, these two tips would both go in it just not necessarily in exactly the same way they were written. Every child should have chores. Every child should have responsibility. That's good. That's not a bad thing. Assign your kid age-appropriate tasks. Ask them for help with things that, don't be fake about it, though, because kids know when you're faking that shit, and it feels really condescending, and nobody likes that. And it doesn't teach them responsibility if you condescend to them. But as far as being assertive, this should say encourage functional assertiveness. Boys and girls both, as they're growing up, need to learn to communicate when they have a need, when they have a boundary, and be firm about it and listen when other people do it.
You know what?
But to sit there and be bossy, or like the way I read that, I don't like the way you're talking to me. Don't teach them to be oversensitive.
You know what I found an interesting thing, because the other article did say something about when your boy is feeling something, encourage him to express his feelings.
It was teaching him to show his emotions.
You're encouraging him to show his emotions. Well, that's what this is. But somehow when you tell a boy to do the exact same thing, it's encouraging him to show his emotions. When you tell a girl to do it, you're encouraging her to be assertive, right?
And you notice the other thing about that, okay, I'm going to reread Let Him Show His Emotions, and we can compare that to teach her to be assertive. Number 2, let him show his emotions. Even in these enlightened times, boys are often expected to stifle their tears and swallow their anger, while girls are allowed more free rein with their emotions. If your son gets upset, let him express himself, as long as he isn't being destructive or completely out of control. Once he's regained control of his emotions, you can talk to him about what he's feeling and why. Help him label his feelings, whether it's hurt or sad or angry. So all of this is expression. They're only talking about expression, and it still has to have a control on it. Whereas with the girl, let me reread that. Teach your daughter to express her needs to adults and stand her ground with peers. If another child is being mean to her, encourage her to say, I don't like the way you're talking to me. Do you notice the difference there?
It's needs. They're phrasing this as needs.
It's also they're telling parents to say to their boys, it's okay for you to be mad, right? It's okay for you to have your feelings and to express them, right? And to cry or whatever, right? But they're actually telling girls, it's important that it's important that you tell other people what you want them to do.
Yeah, so we've noticed what's present in the girl one that's missing from the boy one, but have we noticed what's present in the boy one that's missing from the girl one?
If he's not being destructive.
That's it. The assumption that sometimes the expression of emotion will get out of control is missing from the girl side. Essentially, it's never considered to be out of control.
Well, and
remember what I talked about.
This is hilarious, given that they come right out and state in the first article that girls have more leeway for expressing their emotions. Well, okay, that would include destructive emotions too, wouldn't it?
That's exactly. Remember what I was talking about when we talked on a previous show about abuse and how we don't view it as violence when women slap because they are angry. Like person A and person B are talking, and person A says something reprehensible to person B, and person B hauls off and just bitch slaps person A right upside the head. You tell that story, and most people automatically fill a guy in for person A and a woman in, a gal in for person B, and they're okay with it because he said something reprehensible to her. How dare he talk to a woman like that?
Yeah.
And if you turn it around, if she turned around and said to him, I can smell your balls, instead of him saying, I can smell your pussy, all of a sudden, well, there's something wrong with that girl for saying something like that. But if he hit her, he'd be the bad guy.
Yep.
And that's this is that. He has to label his feelings. He's not told that he should expect any accommodation, where she is told she should expect accommodation. And the idea
And they
that
should
a
not give them
parent
any-
should not that a parent should address inappropriate displays of emotion, or unreasonable, outrageous, out of control displays of emotion in a girl doesn't get brought up.
Yeah, no, it doesn't.
Okay. I want to. I just find this remarkable because they say let your son express emotion within these parameters,
Yeah.
and that's for some reason they're clueless. Why can girls seem so free to express their emotions? I mean, I tell my son he can express his emotions in very narrow parameters. Why can't he be more like a girl?
Yeah.
You wonder why boys
Okay.
are committing suicide. Okay,
I have a
moving on.
question for the chat because I'm watching the chat and I think I'm having an uber nerd moment. I do not understand why it's okay to say guy and not use gal to describe female people. Why does that make me old? Did people not use that word now?
No, there was a feminist who was trying to bring it back, though. A few, maybe 5 or 10 years ago, she was trying to bring back gal as opposed to girl. Gal would be the equivalent of guy, and it would connote an adult or a child of the female persuasion, just like guy does with males. And but yeah, no, it's apparently it's a diminutive, and therefore it's infantilizing and condescending and paternalistic and patriarchal and
Okay.
right. So
Well, guy actually meant like someone who looks really bad, like an ugly person. So
Hey, I had family members who were named Guy
I know, but that's what it was.
on both sides of the family.
Okay, but let's go to
let's
number
move on.
Wow.
2.
No, they're all saying not really. So apparently I'm old fashioned. Okay, I can do that. All right, number 2. Oh, I'm on the wrong article here. This place is full of number 2. Be specific in your compliments. When you tell your daughter how smart she is, it means much more if you use concrete examples. Tell her, you have a really good memory, or boy, you sure know your dinosaurs.
Okay.
Once
Okay,
again,
so you know,
why only girls?
Okay, but okay, that actually makes a little bit of sense, because if you just tell her she's wonderful, then maybe she thinks that you're just pandering to her like the entire Greek chorus of the rest of the culture.
But why only girls?
Because they're the
why-
only ones who get pandered to in that way. Do you see boys, an epidemic of parents and people complimenting their boys just randomly? You're just so great, right? Boys.
Okay, well, my family's
boys are
different.
great. Boys are wonderful, right? Boys rule. Do you ever see that? No,
Not really.
No, but you do
actually-
see when you go in, you gotta, like, my family would get all dressed up and go to church for Easter and all that, and of course the compliments that each of us would get on our clothes sounded very similar. They were almost exactly the same, except gendered, of course.
Yeah, aren't you a handsome young man? Aren't you?
Yeah, aren't you a handsome young lady? And
Yeah.
it was lady and gentleman. We were always ladies and gentlemen because they didn't know me very well.
Oh,
I
Well,
was
this one,
not
I mean-
very ladylike.
this one isn't really offensive because it's sort of but except in context.
Yeah,
Well,
it bugs me that this is not something. This is once again, this is advice. If I were writing a piece on parenting, I would have not made this gendered, and I would have. The only thing that I would say is simply, only compliment when it's deserved, and be specific, and don't bullshit your kids. And that shouldn't be. You don't just don't bullshit your daughter. You don't bullshit your son either.
Yeah,
And,
but I
when
think-
the way the sons get bullshitted more often, girls get bullshitted. Oh, you look great. Boys get bullshitted. Oh, you'll be fine.
Well,
There are
but-
times when girls need to hear that they don't, and there are times when boys need to hear, oh, you look great, when they don't. And there are times when we say each to the child that it gets said to the most, the boy or the girl, that we're wrong. He won't be fine, and she doesn't look great.
Well, but I do think that actually saying to a girl, and this is one of the things my sister really had an issue with her daughter, is the gold star. right? The gold star on the work that had to be redone because it was so poor, but good job, right? And it's like, why are you giving my daughter a gold star, right, when the work is so substandard that she has to redo it? Like, what the fuck is wrong with you? So essentially, and I think that this actually might be something. Compliment your daughter, but be specific, right? So actually praise her, not just for being a girl, not just girl power, girls rule, girls, rule the world, all of that stuff, but actually find something she's good at and compliment her about that, right?
Now that touches on number 3 here. Number 3 says, make your praise match reality. Now this, to me, this is sad that parents actually have to be told this at all.
Yeah.
And it goes on, a 3rd grader will know that she's not a musical genius or the best artist on the planet, but she'll appreciate if you notice her improvement from one month to the next.
How come there wasn't a concern on how best to praise your son?
Yeah.
Yeah, there doesn't seem to be, there's just encourage, I mean, praise the positive, but here it's not about, with the son, it's about praising it when he deserves it. In this one, it's about making sure that the girl feels like the praise is good, like that
no. In this one, it's making sure that you only praise her when she deserves it.
No. This is not. This is making sure that the praise, there's a difference in how they're approaching praising. With the girl, they're approaching praising in such a way that she receives the praise and feels good about it. Like,
yeah, basically that it's acceptable, it's realistic, that she doesn't feel like she's having smoke blown up her ass.
That she knows she's not being bullshitted. She knows she's not being.
And this is the thing.
With the boy, there's no sense.
But, when do you see parents praising their boys with a line of pap, a line of bullshit?
I have seen that.
To boys' parents.
All right. Can I just praise
don't praise your boys when they're like acting like morons.
I have seen that. I have seen that happen.
And Hannah, I want to just explain my line of thinking here. When they're talking about complimenting a boy, they're not talking about it in the context of making sure that the compliment is appreciated by the boy. They're not doing it from a context of, oh, how will the boy receive this compliment? Will he see if it's concrete enough to be appreciated by him? Will he think that you're just bullshitting him? They're simply saying only praise him when he acts in an appropriate manner.
How can you use compliments to train him to do what you want, in other words?
Yeah, okay. But with the girl, Karen, just let me finish. With the girl, the locus, the important focus here is to make sure that she enjoys the compliment, that the compliment is concrete enough for her to enjoy it, that it is not fatuous, that she doesn't perceive it to be fake, so that she enjoys it and appreciates it. There's a completely different situation. It's not that people should only compliment their daughters when they deserve them. It's that they should make sure that the compliments that they give their daughters are appreciated by their daughters. So you see the different locus. With the boys, it's the parent determining when the boy is deserving of praise. With the girl, it's the girl determining whether or not the praise is deserving of her.
Yeah, remember I did say, be specific. It means much more if you use concrete examples and make your praise match reality. She'll appreciate it if you notice her improvement from one month to the next, versus being told she's a musical genius or the best artist on the planet. And I have seen people blow smoke up their kids' asses with respect to compliments, and it's both genders, and I've seen parents that have coddled their kids to the point where their kids are completely unrealistic in their expectations of the world. And then the kid gets knocked down hard by the world when they no longer have mom and dad to protect them. And that happens to both sexes. So it is reasonable to say, be realistic in your compliments with both sexes. But what Allison pointed out is pretty interesting, because in addition to being a a difference in attitude towards kids on the part of the writer. It's kind of a symptom in our society. So we don't care as much as a society how the compliment affects the boy. You know, it's not how the boy feels, I should say, how it affects him on an emotional level. We care how the compliment directs the boy. But with a girl in our society, we care how the compliment affects the girl emotionally. We don't care how the compliment directs the girl.
Yep, that's what I'm getting.
Yeah, no, I will give you that. I will absolutely give you that. Although I do think it's good advice.
Yeah,
Well,
and again, if I were writing this, because let's see if I can find the male equivalent of this is probably, yeah, praise the positive. Number 10 on the boy one is the equivalent of numbers 2 and 3 in the girl one. And the boy one, it says, boy behavior, even if it's age appropriate, can be hard for adults to deal with. So it already starts out saying he's going to be bad a lot. And boys get plenty of correcting, reprimanding, and scolding in school and at home as a result. Parents of girls often complain that boys get all the attention in the classroom, but at least at the early stages, much of that attention is negative. That is 2/3 of the writing under this heading. The first paragraph is bigger than the second one. So the second one paragraph, what can you do? Whenever possible, try to catch your son being good, because that's apparently a challenge, right? Let him know that you appreciate his efforts to gain self-control and channel his energy into activities that are constructive and rewarding. That is dramatically different.
Yep.
That is dramatically different.
Well,
when telling your daughter, it's just assumed that you're going to be telling your daughter how smart she is, and that you need to use concrete examples. It's just assumed that your daughter's improvement being noticed is going to be why you're going to call her a musical genius or the best artist on the planet, and you need to tone it down and be more realistic so she understands that you really are giving her a deserved compliment. And there is nothing mentioned about you're offsetting the criticism that she's going to get for bad behavior with these compliments.
But she's not going to get criticism for bad behavior because her behavior is the gold standard as a girl.
Yeah.
Even when she's being bad, right?
Yeah.
Even when she's being a tattletale. Do you guys remember? Maybe not Allison so much because you're a little younger than me and Hannah. But I remember the worst thing you could be as a kid, including when it came to, you know, what your parents had to say about you and to you, was a tattletale.
Did you ever, as a kid, read Beverly Cleary's series on the Quimby family?
No, I did not.
That was more, I think that's more of a U.S. kid thing. But this writer, and these were books that, like, there was Henry and Ribsy, and he was the neighbor boy and dog, the kid's dog. There was Beatrice, and the first books were about them, and then there was Ramona, and Ramona sort of became her go-to character. And I read all those books, and Ramona in the first grade, that was a big part of her, the character's hurdle that she got over that year was dealing with being perceived as a tattletale, even when she wasn't. And that kind of struck me because that's something that's the one thing that girls that age really get criticized for. And it's partly because it's a huge habit with girls, like really rules oriented.
Yeah.
And in fact, some of the worst rules lawyers I've ever gamed with have been other girls.
Yeah, but you know
get up
why?
And kick their asses.
You know why? It's because and here's the weird thing, because, you know, boys, the way boys, when they play together, they play by rules, and one of the things that, you know, like you will see with boys is you broke the rules, you're out, gone, you're done. Right? With girls, we need to change the rules. The rules need to change to, you know, accommodate blah, blah, blah. right? And I'm going to kill these dogs. Both of them are female, by the way. But, essentially, and that's why the rules lawyers, because they're always looking for a fucking loophole, right?
Yep.
The rules lawyers, the worst ones are women, because they're always looking for a way to, to weasel through the system of rules and get the advantage. And it's like when you actually have a system where, and this is typical of boys and girls, is you have a conflict on the playgrounds, boys will get into a shoving match. You have a conflict on the playground with girls, right? One of them is going to go and tell on the other.
Well, or the relational aggression comes out, and
Yeah, or
everyone's
spread
not
rumor.
talking to Ramona for the day, and anybody that breaks that rule is the next target.
Oh, yeah.
It
No,
depends on which girl you piss off. If you piss off the girl who's not the queen bee, then that girl goes to the teacher. But if you piss off the queen bee, you are ostracized. And that's a
vicious.
totally different thing. But as far as the social thing goes, the rules of the playground, the don't tattle rule of the playground, or the don't tattle rule in school and everything. Boys have their own version of that. When you have a problem, you deal with it within the group. You don't have to bring in an outsider, and all of the adults are outsiders. It doesn't matter who they are. All of the adults are outsiders, and that's the way it was at the park when I was growing up for both sexes.
Yeah, me too.
And when I got into junior high school, and I ran into the girls who did that exclusive, we're not talking to Ramona today because she angered the queen bee. I knew what was going on. I was totally blindsided by that. Totally fucked with my head and everything. That blew my mind.
Well,
this is the next thing too. We go with the make your praise match reality. Right after that is another paragraph. Help her understand why she sometimes gets left out. Explain to your daughter that if she isn't invited to every birthday party or to every jump rope game, and she won't be, it's not meant to be an insult. Explain that when another child says, "You can't be my friend," it probably has more to do with that child's bad mood than it does with your daughter.
Oh, what a bunch of bullshit.
Boys don't get any explanation at all of relational aggression. This is such a glossed over explanation of relational aggression. It's like enough to make you nauseous from getting too much sugar.
Yeah, I'm like listening to this. I'm like, this is not going to help anyone.
No.
You can't say to your daughter, "Oh, this isn't about." It is about relational aggression. Is about what your daughter did or did not say. And interesting how they will. This one, number 4 for girls, you need to compare it to number
maybe number 6, give him chances to polish his social skills.
Yes, number 6, give him chances to polish his social skills. Boys don't form close, intimate friendships as easily as girls. They're more likely to play in groups and jockey for leadership. Help your son strengthen one-on-one friendships by arranging play dates for him and encouraging him to share his toys, use good manners, and generally play nice. Now, they are actually, it's glossed over, but it's short so you can understand, but they are recognizing that groups of boys can have a negative effect in X, Y, and Z way. They're not recognizing the same thing for groups of girls in number 4.
Yeah, no, they're not recognizing that there is a hierarchy among girls, and "you're not invited to my birthday party" is like the kiss of death.
Yeah. Well, and they're also not recognizing
for girls who are 8 years old.
There's 2 things here that are important to point out. The relational aggression aspect is one of them. The other thing is girl absolutely has to learn to differentiate between not having things in common with other girls and not identifying with each other, and having some cliques develop based on, hey, we all like anime, so we're going to watch anime together. And Susie and Jenny and those guys are really into makeup, and they're going to do makeup together. But maybe there's some overlap between the two groups, but you got some people in each group that are only part of one group or the other because they don't like the other group's activity. And that's not relational aggression. But if, Jessie really likes both and she gets kicked out of the makeup group because she pisses off the queen bee of the makeup group, that's relational aggression.
Well,
if she does something shitty and she never gets a chance to become a better person and shape up and rebuild her friendship because she's been kicked out of the group and gets the silent treatment forever, that's dysfunctional.
Well, this is actually it's something that schools have addressed in terms of they haven't actually addressed the problem or acknowledged the problem, but they have come up with a solution to the problem that has no name, which is girls' relational aggression, in terms of, on Valentine's Day. On Valentine's Day, you are given, as a student in elementary school, you are given a list of names of all the people in your class, and you are expected to give a Valentine to every single person in your class. You are not expected. You are not allowed to leave anyone out, at least not when my kid was in school, in elementary school, when they still gave out Valentines. Leaving somebody out was a big no-no. And why do you think they brought that in? Was it because boys were excluding people? Maybe boys only gave Valentines to the girls, right? But they weren't excluding people based on popularity or based on ostracization or whatever, right? Like it was mostly, I would guess, the girls who were doing so, right?
Are you done, Karen?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm actually gonna take this totally out of left field. But it actually relates, because I've been thinking a lot about the myth of the Sabine women. And for those of you who don't know, it's the rape of the Sabine women. It's more like the kidnapping of the Sabine women by the Romans was one of the founding events of the Roman Empire. And I was thinking about what kind of women, because that event probably never happened. It probably is completely apocryphal. It's just mythological. But it was something that women probably developed to tell about themselves. And I'm thinking about what kind of women would end up being in that situation and end up saying that myth to them. And I'm wondering if it is victims of relational aggression from other tribes who just said, you know what, I'm going to get a better deal with these brigands over here who are just, settling a bunch of scrub than you guys. And then they just turned all of that dishonor into this honorable myth of self-sacrifice and courage. I just put it out there. I know everybody's like, what the fuck, Allison? Okay.
Who knows? Maybe.
It's entirely possible. It wouldn't be the first time a group of girls sicked men on a group of other girls they were mad at. That happens all the time.
Well, no, it wasn't actually a situation where they men on anyone. It was a situation where they actually ended it. They ended a fight over them.
Okay.
So I'm just spitballing now. I'm going to shut up.
Okay, well, there is something else I want to point out about this, and it's kind of left field too compared to the rest of this discussion on this part of the topic, and that is the article here was clearly written by someone who does not understand how boys bond. Because, let me read this first sentence again. Most boys don't form close, intimate friendships as easily as girls. I'm going to call bullshit on that. I spent most of my childhood hanging out with boys.
Me too.
They not only do they form close, intimate friendships as easily as girls, because now they're mistaking a lot of girls' one-on-one friendships and where they spend a lot of time together. They're mistaking that for meaning close and intimate in order to say that boys don't form close, intimate friendships as easily as girls. I mean, I have seen boys in my neighborhood where I was growing up. I have seen boys go through, bullying together. Stick with each other when they knew they were all going to get their asses kicked by older boys. I have seen boys be the other boy's strength in terms of, I just fell down and I injured my leg or I injured my ankle, and now I have to get to my mom's house so she can take me to the doctor, and be their emotional strength of getting themselves home, because
Yeah.
they knew nobody was going to go get their mom. And I have seen them be each other's strength in terms of dealing with situations, social situations, situations with girls, situations at home that were horrible, that, you know, they're like, well, don't tell anybody, but my mom does this to my dad, or my relative that lives at, you know, nearby, or that's at my house all the time, is an alcoholic, and my family's dealing with this, you know. And it's this idea that boys don't have close, intimate friendships is absolute bullshit.
It is. I think honestly, part of it is that girls and women are going to be more emotive in they're going to verbalize, right, how they feel about their friends a lot more, and you know, and express it in a more open, public way. Like there was this one time I was sitting after work in the bar having my staff meal, and we had, you know, a young hostess on, and she's like, I guess she was like 19 or 20 or something like that, right? And a friend of hers walked in the room into the bar that she hadn't seen in a long time, and she all of a sudden just goes into this like squeeing state where she's like, oh my God, and she runs across the bar. It was like we were almost closed, right? So there's almost nobody there. She runs across the bar and she jumps up and she wraps her arms around this person, right? And her legs, okay, around this person, because she's teeny tiny, and this other girl was like, you know, my size, right? And she's like, oh, it's been so long, right? And you don't see men acting that way. You don't see men emoting in that way. You don't see men doing what my freaking aunt, not my aunt, my boyfriend, my fiance's aunt does, you know, at Thanksgiving. Oh, it's just so wonderful that we're all together here, you know, and I could just feel the love in the room. And she just goes, and it's just like, yeah, bitch, we all know you all hate each other. You're not fooling anyone. But men don't emote in those ways. So it's less obvious, right? And it almost always comes down to because women and girls give a lot of lip service to their friendships, right? You know, and it involves a lot of talking and expressing of feelings and all of those things, right? With men, it's more about action. It's more about being, you know, like my guy is like, oh yeah, no, if my friend Shane phoned me up at 4 a.m. one day and said he needed to hide a body, I'd be right there.
And see, that's the other thing. I've seen guys that communicate things like that without saying a word. And the first time I noticed it, the first time I noticed it was in a actually adverse situation. The last year my brother and I ever went trick-or-treating, I was in the 5th grade, he was in the 3rd grade, and our buddy was in the grade between. He was a 4th grader. So we had 9, 10, and 11 years old, right? And it was the only year we ever got to go trick-or-treating without a parent, because I was old enough that my parents trusted me to know what time it was and to keep everybody on task watching for traffic. And since there were all kinds of parents in the neighborhood, and my parents knew everybody in the neighborhood, and we knew what streets we were allowed to be on, where we were allowed to go out by ourselves. So we get to this one area, and one of the other kids comes running up to us and informs us that there are high schoolers out beating kids up that are out by themselves and taking their candy. And we're on a street that has, out of the entire community, the one light pole that was broken and had gone out. So we had this one stretch of sidewalk where there was the block, and then an alley, and then the rest of the block. And where the alley was, there was normally a light post, and it was dark. And we knew that if we took a different route, it was still going to take us through an area where, because it was close to the end of the night, we were still going to be vulnerable. And we were still going to end up, if they were going to get us, they would know then that we had avoided them, and that would just get us a worse beating. So we knew we were going to have to walk down that street. And we knew we were going to have to be ready for a fight. And we knew they were going to be bigger and stronger than us. And we knew that we were going to get our asses kicked and we couldn't get out of it. And the guys just looked at each other, and one of them stood on one side of me and the other one stood on the other side of me. And they started, they sort of got me moving, and we started walking forward. Neither one of them said, well, let's stand on either side of Hannah so we can protect her because she's the girl. They just did it. They were best buddies, and each one of them knew what the other one was thinking. And each one of them, they steeled their nerves, and I could see them steeling their nerves for this upcoming fight. And I was involved in it, I was part of the threesome walking into this, it felt like walking into Mordor for a little kid, knowing we were going to get our asses kicked by high school kids. Of course, the best part of the story is that we didn't. In fact, my brother broke a 14-year-old's nose defending me that night. And he became notorious after that. But that communication and that understanding and that bonding that those guys had, and because I wasn't one of the whiny ass getting, interfering with their activities, you have to let me in or I'm going to tell mom kind of girls, I got to see it happen and I got to understand it. And I think a lot of women have no idea how guys bond and how guys work together. They don't get it. So if they don't see men having a long discussion before they do something and like talking it out endlessly and arguing over what's the right course of action, and telling stories about it and all that kind of stuff like we gals do.
Feelings about each other, you're so brave, man. You're so brave.
No. In fact, afterwards, after the fight was over, there was another moment like that. They didn't ask each other, are you okay? They checked each other over, hey, is that your blood? Nope, that's his blood, that kind of thing. Well, what do we got to do? And there was a little bit of celebration. All right, we won, but there was no, like, girls would have been panicking after something like that. And
they would have been doing a group hug at the very least, right?
Oh yeah. It would have been all like watching the stupid Teletubbies.
Yeah.
No, these guys, they were like, all right, we took care of that problem. Now we have the problem of getting home. We probably better, because I had blood all over me. I got dragged down the sidewalk and my legs were all cut up and stuff. And so they wanted to get me home, and they had, this little lady. We were in front of the home of the neighborhood grandma that everybody brings flowers to and gets stories from and stuff, and she came out and fussed over us and took us inside and gave us milk and cookies and called my dad, my brother and me, our dad, and he came and got us. And there was bonding there too that I think a lot of people don't get. My dad looked at my brother and he said, my brother was covered. When he busted the other kid's nose, it just exploded. It was unbelievable. I never saw so much blood come out of a person's body in my life, and that person not pass out from blood loss. And it covered him from the neck all the way down his pants. And my dad's looking at him and he's like, what happened? And my brother's first, he immediately knew my dad was worried, even though my dad wasn't like, a lady would be sitting there going, oh my God, are you okay? You're all covered in blood. What are we going to do? Call 911. Dad goes, what happened? And my brother goes, it's okay. It's not my blood. And that was instant. Everything was all right after that.
Yeah, no, it's like how I always treated my kids when they were injured, whether it was like in a fight or whether it was well, not that they got into a whole lot of fights, but or crashing into a tree while sledding. You go up to them, you see their face, you look at all the blood and the freaking swelling and everything else, and you just go, well, what does the other guy look like? What's and my daughter, after she crashed with her sled into the tree, she said, Barky. He still looks pretty much like he looked before I crashed into him. So yeah. But I mean,
yeah, this is like this idea that boys don't form close, intimate friendships as easily as girls. This, I gotta look at the author's name here. This is written. There's no author's name. Okay, Chris is a genderless name. This could be a male or a female, but this is clearly someone who does not understand how boys bond, because they don't understand the intimacy of being in a cooperative group and of being able to make a decision between members of that group with a look.
Yeah, I would have to really agree with that. And and the whole idea of the hierarchy being, they're going to be busy jockeying for position. Well, yeah, of course they are. They're going to be, and the hierarchy among boys, and this is one of the things that a lot of people don't understand, is similar to the hierarchy on active duty in the military, where it's like the person in charge is the person with expertise, and so it's a shifting hierarchy, right? It's a hierarchy that generally, like if you have one person who decides that they want to be the dictator, right? They want to be essentially the king bee, right? Yeah, those hierarchies don't generally attract a whole lot of boys or men, right? You have a shifting hierarchy based on who's good at what, right? And so there's always an aspect, there's always something that somebody can contribute to the group in a group of boys or a group of men. There's always something that they can do, whether they're a fast runner and they can run messages, on the front lines, or whether they're like super good at fighting, hand-to-hand combat, great sniper, whatever, right? And you see this in gaming too, is that you have a hierarchy where everybody is able to fill a niche and be an expert in that particular niche. And that's essentially how male hierarchies work, as opposed to female hierarchies, which tend to be much more static. They tend to be less shifting. They tend to be one queen rules them all, and she shall never defer authority to anybody else.
Or be questioned.
I think it's because women tend to go along the warlord group model. And it's not really a shifting hierarchy, because it's not about not about achieving a goal or building up resources for women. It's about dividing up conquered territory.
Yeah, I think that's really what it is.
And the queen bee is the woman, is the Genghis Khan, the Genga Khan, who can maintain the weight required to keep the territories all apportioned correctly. Whereas with men's groups, they tend to be more about goals and sort of almost an egalitarian, working together to achieve a goal. And this shifting leadership makes sense, because in order to achieve a goal, you need different types of expertise at different points in time. So ultimately, the difference between a women's group and a men's group, or group of women and groups of men, is groups of men tend to have the real overarching leader is not a man per se, although there may be a real overarching leader who is a man. It's the goal of the group. Whereas with women, because it's really about territory division, the real overarching leader is the person who can enforce the territorial rules with the sufficient amount of threat of bullying or whatever else. So
ostracization, yeah,
ostracization,
and exclusion.
an exclusion. So it's functionally different. A woman's group is about carving up resources like a bunch of warlords, and a man's group is more like acquiring resources like an egalitarian collective. So there you go.
Well,
and not,
it's been pointed out in the chat, like, girls are not the only ones that practice exclusion. That's true. Boys can do it too. But there is a fundamental difference in the reasoning behind it a lot of times and the way it is executed. Like when I was at the park as a kid, I talk about this park all the time, and I can't tell you where it is because it's a small town and there's other people's privacy involved. But this was a tight-knit group of kids in a neighborhood where there wasn't a lot of money in any of the households. So our activities and our entertainment were outdoors and together, and our imagination was used and so on. And a lot of what got done at that park was kids playing sandlot football. And there were ideas of sportsmanship. There were ideas of, rules of how to relate to other people and be part of the group and everything. And if you broke those rules, the group would not just let you continue to break those rules and be part of the group. You got booted until you could come back and relate better to other people. And, kids in that group would tell you what they wanted from you. Don't bite. We don't play with kids that bite. If you don't bite, we'll play with you. If you bite, we're not going to play with you. That was pretty cut and dried. So they would exclude, but it was for logical reasons. And it wasn't like once you were excluded, you were forever excluded, and anybody that touched you or talked to you had your cooties and had to join the excluded group, the way girls do relational aggression. And while boys can engage in relational aggression at times, it doesn't seem to be nearly, like anywhere near the degree or scope or frequency or even, for the most part, the style that girls do it.
Yeah, I don't actually think that relational aggression comes as naturally, like it comes very naturally to girls. I don't think it comes as naturally to boys. And I think that boys actually actively, or at least they used to, you look at the Christmas Story, that apocryphal movie that, plays every Christmas for 12 hours on the movie channel or whatever, right? Every Christmas day, right? And the licking of the flagpole, right? And how none of the boys, right? Because they triple dog dared him to lick the flagpole, and his tongue stuck to it, right? And none of the boys, when the teacher was demanding to know who made him do this, right? None of the boys, including the boy whose tongue got stuck to the pole, were willing to say, because being a snitch, right, was breaking the rules. And you have a certain code among boys that, you violate it, and there are serious consequences, right? But that doesn't mean you're never going to be able to, get back into the group at some point, right? If you're willing to play by the rules, right, then, and the rules apply to everybody. None of the boys snitched, right? So, but when you're looking at girls, so much of it is subjective. So much of it is like the feminist shifting of goalposts, right? And it really is sort of almost like there are certain girls and women who need a foil. They need an adversary to exclude, and they do it to maintain their power, because essentially the best way that, or I guess one of the easiest ways that you can show that you have high social status is by making other people have low social status, right?
Okay.
And wielding your power over them.
Well, and there's some functionality to the two. So, with women's groups, a lot of the focus with women is acquiring resources in order to be able to raise children. With men, it's acquiring resources, apportioning resources in order to raise children, whereas with men, it's acquiring them. But I just wanted to just do a little bit of housekeeping. Brian, I'm going to wake you up because I sent you some messages and you didn't respond. You're on the article is on the wrong number. It's currently at 8, encourage a healthy body image. It should be at 4, which is the one we're discussing. And the live chat hasn't moved for the last half hour. Okay.
Well, the live chat here, or you mean the live chat on the
on the stream?
On the stream? Yeah, I've been watching it actually. A ludicrous leprechaun brought up something, nerds and social rejects as part in regards to social exclusion, and that is true. There is still a degree of popular versus unpopular among boys. There are boys who have a larger number of friends, and there are boys who have a smaller number of friends. But I also noticed growing up that until you get to a point where there starts to be a risk of social rejection by girls among boys, even the nerds and the social rejects get more social interaction from the boys around them. They don't experience the degree of, ooh, stay away from me, you're not my friend, I don't talk to you, and things like that girls do to other girls. From the boys, until you get into like the close to the junior high age when girls start judging boys for who their friends are. And then you have boys who suddenly will change the way they treat the less popular boys because they don't want the girls to reject them for having nerd cooties.
Well, I think relational aggression is something that it's a learned thing for boys. And
and there's another thing though. I've noticed that boys, and I noticed this with boys who were bullies, and boys who dealt with being bullied, they will work together on things. They don't have a problem with, okay, we have project A, and these are the boys that are assigned to work or that have found themselves in a position to work on project A. And it doesn't matter if project A is a school assignment or the boys at the park decided to move all of the sand in the park sandbox to create a mountain in the middle of the sandbox. They will all work together on that project. And they will not say, I'm not doing this because Larry, the nerd with pimples all over his face, is working on it over there. Yeah. I'm not going to work on it over here because Larry's in the same sandbox with me. Girls will. Yeah. Girls, I won't work in the same sandbox with Susie, the nerd, who has giant glasses and reads books that my high school brother is reading. This is not that ever happened to me.
I think this is really, and there have been studies that have shown that relational aggression is something that girls show very early on. That points to it being an innate form of intrasexual competition, right? And boys learn it, but where are they learning it from? Right? I mean, honestly, when you think about it, would you rather have that conflict on the playground where you get into a shoving match, right? Maybe even fisticuffs, then both sides walk away respecting the other, right? Because even the guy who got beat up often gets the respect of the group because, he stood up for himself and he took his beating like a man, right? And so he will get respect, right? Or go tell an adult and have an adult come and mediate the conflict for you, right? And that's a tool of relational aggression, right? What Stephanie Guthrie did to Gregory Elliott was relational aggression, right? I don't like what this man is saying to me, so I'm going to sick the police and the crown after him.
What I was getting at was more in terms of, all right, so you got Larry and Joe, and you got Susie and Kate. Let's say Kate's a nerd, Joe's a nerd, Larry's a jock, Susie's a jock. Susie might not invite Kate over to her house. Susie might turn around and actively exclude Kate from everything Susie wants to be involved in because she doesn't want to be associated with Kate in any way. At the boy end of it, Larry might not get invited to the jock's house. Okay. But he will work with him on things. He will work with him on things. He will not exclude him from everything he's involved in unless Larry is a criminal. And then the jock will say, well, I'm not sure I really trust this guy. He actually has to have something about him that is a character flaw, a real, genuine character flaw, before another guy will treat him as if he has a real, genuine character flaw.
Yeah.
Girls will treat other girls as if just having different likes, just having a different personality is a real, genuine character flaw.
Yeah, having bad hair or biting their nails or whatever it is that she chose. And one of the things that always found interesting about girls was that it really is a lot of the time, it really is a matter of just circumstances and bad luck, right? Being on the receiving end of that kind of thing, because you don't necessarily have to even really do anything wrong or anything that, other people aren't doing. Sometimes that girl who's the queen bee just needs somebody to exclude, right? Sometimes she just needs somebody to exclude in order to consolidate her power. And she might pick you because you bite your nails, right? Or she might pick that other girl because she has messy hair every day, right? Or she might pick that other girl because she has, a congenital birth defect, holes in her heart or something, and can't participate in gym, right? Like it's not based on anything other than the need, the drive, the instinctive drive to find somebody to exclude to consolidate my own power.
And I think if it was a situation where we with belonging, the way we center women, because women really control the sense of belonging in a society, and they exclude and disclude because of that, and they have the power to exclude and disclude because of that, and you get people who abuse that power because that people abuse power. And so I think that a lot of this, maybe a lot of it's biological, maybe some of it is social, but it's simply because women have the power to exclude and include people
Well,
in
I think
society.
I don't think that, like, because I don't think bullying is like something that girls are more likely to do or anything like that. But I think that they do it in different ways, and they do it for different reasons, right?
Exactly.
And the different distal reasons, not proximal reasons. So,
well, all kids that bully, to a degree, all kids that bully other kids, in part because those other kids are different. And the boy that was with my brother and me when we went trick-or-treating that night, he was bullied a lot because he had a speech impediment. He had, the way his body formed when he was in utero, he had a growth in his throat that made it hard for him to learn how to speak normally, and he talked through his nose. And the kids were really mean to him about it. And there were boys who engaged in feminine relational aggression towards him all of his life. They're still, even in adulthood. My brother knocked 4 guys out in a bar fight once because of that. I've had an interesting time watching my brother. I mean, you can sort of tell I have a great deal of admiration for him as an example of toughness and loyalty and many of the things that I admire about men. But it does happen. That kind of behavior does happen, where that type of relational aggression exists in guys. But I don't know. Are we going to go through the entire article on girls, or?
Yeah, we should.
Yeah, let's just finish this up. The next one really isn't that bad, so I don't.
The encourage competence one, I'm going to read it, and I'm going to. The one objection I have to this is, how dare they say this about only girls? Number 5, encourage competence. Don't be too quick to help your daughter with homework or chores. If she asks for help, ask her to try working through it for a couple more minutes on her own first. Now, I will admit, girls give up faster than boys on a lot of things. That is true. But this is something that needs to be done for both sexes.
Yes. Well, let's get on to 6.
Number 6, encourage her to play sports if she wants to. Again, both sexes. Girls have more sporty options than ever before. Well, that's not entirely true, but going on. If she wants to do gymnastics or play football, give her a chance to get in the game and find out what she's capable of. Don't decide which sports are right for her. She can figure it out herself.
Okay, I want to get in there. I just
Me
want to
too.
point-
I want to say one thing right up front.
Yeah.
If your daughter is 5 feet tall and weighs 80 pounds soaking wet with rocks in her pockets, do not encourage her to play football with boys that are 6 feet tall and weigh 250 pounds, because she's going to get crushed, okay? Or she's going to wreck the game.
All right, I just want to bring your attention to 7. Make music part of his life. Not encourage her to play sports if she wants to. Make music part of his life.
Yeah.
I want, in with the son, you make him do it. With the daughter, you encourage it if she wants. Because that, I would say,
Okay, but it said in the boys article, let him do ballet if that's what he wants to do.
I would
Right.
say, yeah, music is a genderless thing too. This is another one that kind of cheesed me off. Music should be part of everybody's life. You shouldn't have to play an instrument to have music part of your life. And it mentioned here listening to music too. My parents had music playing in the home all the time. We had music all the time. My dad's musical. My brother's musical. I'm kind of musical. But in comparison, like my dad played by ear. So we had music all the time. There was always the radio was on, or there was music on the television. That's not bad, but it's not gendered.
Well, it isn't gendered, and honestly, I don't think that it's something that that any parent would really need to specifically aim towards boys, because if you look at all of the musicians, right? If you look at the ratio of musicians, you look at the ratio of composers, you look at the ratio of songwriters, you look at the ratio of all of the people who are creating music, producing music producers, right? When you look at all of that, people playing instruments, right? You look at what's the most common musical role a man would have is playing guitar, being in a band, playing guitar, right? In a garage band as a teenager or whatever, right? You look at with women, young women, it's singing.
Yeah, this is another one that things in my family sort of relate to this in a different way. My mom's side of the family was very musical, and my dad's side of the family had several people on it in it who were very musical. Playing by ear was a thing more on my dad's side of the family, and learning a lot of different musical instruments is more on my mom's side of the family. And I was, I think, 5 years old when I started imitating the stuff my mother and father were playing on. We had a piano in the living room, and Dad played everything he heard on the radio, and Mom read sheet music, and she played classics and, anything she could get she played boogie music, everything she could get her hands on. And I heard her playing the Moonlight Sonata, and I sat down and played the first few bars of it. And I had trouble after the first couple bars because my fingers wouldn't spread far enough. So they thought I was going to be this great musical virtuoso, Hannah's going to be great. She needs to take piano lessons. She's going to be perfect. After 5 years of taking piano lessons, I kind of stopped. My brother, on the other hand, when he first got a guitar, sounded like a cat fight in the alley outside the back of the house. And they all, oh gosh, how do we get him to understand that he's tone deaf? He needs to do something else. He's never going to be good at this. I was the only one that thought, if he just, like Mom learned to read notes, he can learn how to read music and play music. It didn't make sense to me for them to be talking about this like he was never going to be able to do it. And out of the two of us, what he did was stick with it and fight to gain what he did not already have. And we had hours and hours of, he would have me play notes on the piano, and he learned to be able to tell me what note I was playing without looking at the piano, without being where he could see the piano. And that was something that nobody expected him to be able to do, because of course in my family everybody thought being able to play by ear was a natural talent that you couldn't develop on your own. Either you had it or you didn't. He plays 7 different musical instruments and sings now, and he's in like 4 or 5 different bands. And I don't have a musical instrument in my home that is mine. My son he played an instrument in band for a while because he wanted to. And we bought it for him when he wanted to play. And when he was done being part of the school band, we didn't say, oh, no, we bought you this instrument, you got to stay in a band. But he wanted to keep it. And, it's something that he every so often messes with. And that's fine. And that's it. And no pressure either direction. But the reality of it is this idea of you can make a person's decision for them with respect to music is probably one of the most misguided things that parents do. You can't decide your kid's interests and aptitudes. And if your kid doesn't start out a virtuoso, don't tell them they can't do it. Let them work for it. Encourage them to work for it, because they might just surprise you.
Let's move on to 7.
Don't make assumptions about her strengths and weaknesses. Another genderless admonition. This is something that's true about both sexes.
Well,
just because your child's a girl doesn't mean she'll struggle with fractions or that she'll ace reading tests.
Boy doesn't mean he'll be rough and tumble, but he might be highly likely. Sorry.
This is so insulting. It doesn't mean she won't want to go fishing or try out for Little League. Follow her cues to best nurture her strengths and work on improving her weaknesses.
Can I point out that the boys' list was full of assuming strengths and weaknesses?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
It was not having a strength in making friends, not having a strength in being able to control his energy, not having a strength in being able to recognize his emotions. All of these things are incidentally stereotypes about men and boys. But when it comes to stereotypes about girls, you're supposed to not make assumptions.
Yeah, it's insane. And it really...
It's insane because this is written by the same person, too.
But it's essentially saying you can expect this of your boy. If he does something different, that's okay, right? If he does what is expected, that's also okay, right? And that, but help him to develop as a person and, to channel his strengths and all of that, right? Whereas with girls, it's essentially don't even make any assumptions at all.
Well, my thing on this is 2 articles that should have had the gender ripped out of them, been made 1 article, and been shaped up to not treat the sexes as though they are, as though the boys have a.
If there's an
I'm
echo
hearing
going
myself.
on.
I'm hearing myself. Okay, it should have been treated as a 20-item article where it doesn't treat boys as if everything that they do must be either viewed as, is this wrong or not wrong? And everything that girls do, being viewed as, am I seeing this right? Am I doing right by this girl? Because that's basically what they're doing here. It's 10 each, and the boy tips are I don't even.
Here's how to get.
I lost my train of thought because of the echo.
Here's how to get your son to do what you want him to do. Here's how to get your daughter, society to do what your daughter wants it to do.
Well, it's here's how to manipulate your boy, and here's how to bolster your girl.
Well, I mean, it's also sort of manipulative. The mother's flattering the mother at the beginning.
Yeah.
And it's also really putting girls in a position where they should not be put. Like, because a young girl is like a puppy, right? She needs to learn how not to chew your feet. Otherwise, she doesn't develop.
She needs to learn not to pee on the carpet.
Yes, exactly.
And everybody around her.
Is essentially she's peeing on the carpet and everyone's saying, "Oh, what a beautiful watercolor you've created." and then she comes to the point where, you know, it's essential that you don't pee on the carpet in the boardroom, and she pees on the carpet and she wonders why everyone's freaking out and she can't advance.
Yeah.
I don't know if that metaphor even worked, but let's move on.
It does. Number 8. This is so insulting. Number 8, encourage a healthy body image. When she asks the inevitable, am I pretty? Answer her with an enthusiastic yes. When you praise her appearance, try to highlight her actions too. You looked so graceful at gymnastics today, or your eyes really shone on the stage. It can also be helpful for older girls to hear that models in magazines don't look like real girls or women, and that their photographs are altered to make them look thinner and more flawless than they actually are. Are you fucking for real? You're basically discouraging body shaming by body shaming. Models in magazines have always been thin or curvy, and at the height of conventional beauty. When we didn't have Photoshop, they were still in the best of shape, and they were still at the top of the line for conventional beauty. That's the first thing. The second thing is, you need to teach your girl that the most important thing about her is not whether or not she's pretty. It doesn't, it doesn't have to be the extent of her person. And for God's sake, don't teach her that everybody else has to treat her like she's pretty if she's not. Being plain is not the end of the world. If you hang your girl's happiness on being pretty when she's not, and she finds out later that she's not pretty, that is a far height to crash down from. And when you hit the bottom, it hurts. It's hard. And if you don't have the tools to deal with it, it can create a monster. And the other end of that is, why do you think feeling pretty is a healthy body image? Working to be healthy, having a consideration for what is going to cause you to have a heart attack, or what is going to cause you to have diabetes, or what makes you feel like you have a good amount of energy, that's a good body image. That's a healthy body image. And it should be something that you work for with both sexes. You can be satisfied with not being the prettiest thing in the room.
No,
And you
agreed.
can be satisfied with working towards a healthy diet and a healthy amount of exercise for your specific situation. And that's it. You don't have to be a model, and you don't have to resent the fact that somebody else is,
Well,
whether you're a boy or a girl.
No, and I absolutely agree with that. And I think too, I mean, Jordan Peterson says, life, the existence of a hierarchy, would be a horrible thing if there was only one hierarchy. But there are dozens and dozens and dozens of games that you could play, right, in society. And, so maybe you're not the prettiest girl. Okay, well, you can play a different game, right? Maybe you're not the smartest guy, right? Maybe you can play a different game, right? Maybe you're just extremely conscientious and reliable, and so you will always have a job because there is an employer who will always value you because you are the guy who shows up, right? Or some other thing, right? There are a multitude of games that you can play, and you will be able to succeed at one of them. It's very rare for somebody who is going to be a failure at every single game that exists in society, right? And so it's important for all of us parents to give our kids a realistic expectation of what kind of games they're going to be good at. What kind of games are you going to be able to succeed at? And that doesn't mean that you give up playing an instrument, a musical instrument, because you're never going to become a virtuoso, right? No, that's not what it means. Because you can get enjoyment, right, and satisfaction out of improving, doing that, in doing that, even if you're never going to be top dog, you're never going to, make the charts, you're never going to have a viral freaking Justin Bieber-esque video that gets, somebody to sign in for an album from you, right? But there are a multitude of games you can play, and some of them are glamorous and some of them are not, but you can succeed at a multitude of different things. And so telling a girl that she's pretty when she's not actually pretty is essentially robbing her of the realism that she would need to figure out some other way that she can some other thing that she can offer, right? If she's always, thinking, okay, well, I'm just going to be as pretty as I can be, even though I'm never going to be more than a 5 or a 6 on the scale of 1 to 10, right? Yeah, she's not going to get very far that way. So work on your humor, work on your charm, work on your skills, work on something else, right? And that, I think, is really what parents need to help their kids do, and they need to help them sort out. And lying to them about what they are is not going to help. So.
All right.
And making your physical appearance the most important thing about you can be deadly. It can be deadly for both sexes. Models of both sexes die from the health conditions that go with being anorexic and bulimic. It's not universal. Clearly, there are models that develop healthy body images as well, healthy health habits, good health habits, but making your looks the end-all be-all of your entire person is very damaging. And the idea that only girls face this is absolute bullshit. And at the other end of it, this idea that body image is more important than body reality is also bullshit. Somebody used the term land whale in the chat. If your kid, before they're an adult, before their metabolism slows down, if your kid is a land whale, the first problem isn't whether or not he or she feels pretty or handsome. It is this child heading for an early death from diabetes or stroke or heart attack or any number of other issues that go with being overweight? You address how do we obtain better health for this child? How do we teach this child to work at improving his or her health? Forget looks. Teach the child to be more concerned about taking care of themselves. The next one is number 9. Prepare for sexism. Prepare her for sexism. Even today, some people think that girls can't do some things that boys can. If you notice your daughter watching TV shows or movies where girls stay in the background while boys save the day, point it out and talk to her about how different things are in the real world. I can only laugh at this. It's
how different from from what?
Before you even get to that point, what this actually says, I'm gonna do a fixed it for you. Number 9, install the victim module. Even today, some girls don't follow the victim narrative closely enough. Use watching television shows where girls don't behave the way feminists think they should to help instill that feminist victim narrative more strongly in your daughter's psyche.
Remember, when your daughter fails to achieve due to the victim module, blame the patriarchy and install an updated and more powerful victim module. Jesus fucking Christ.
And for God's sake, don't ever acknowledge that sometimes people have misconceptions about boys and that those are wrong too. Nope. It only happens to girls. Girls need the victim module. Boys should never be prepared for when people are sexist towards them. And at no point should you instill in either child the idea that somebody being sexist in a way that doesn't directly impact them doesn't hurt them.
Shall we move on?
Yeah.
Yes, sorry, I keep barking.
Yeah, we
Number
figured you're
10.
dealing with dogs.
Number 10, point out positive female role models. Notice this one was entirely lacking. There was nothing in the boys' article about positive male role models. Number 10, take every opportunity while you're watching the news or reading the paper to show your daughter that women, senators, sportscasters, doctors, athletes can do anything. Reading books with strong female characters is one of the best ways to get the idea across without lecturing. I don't know if this person's the best at advising on how to get any idea across without lecturing, but if you can't think of enough books like that, ask a librarian. They often have lists of books to choose from and can make recommendations.
Okay, but here's the thing, right? Probably 99% of grow up with female role models all around them in their lives. Women in positions of authority, their mothers, their daycare providers, their teachers, right? Their babysitters, right? All of those people, their grandmothers. 99% of girls grow up with female role models, right? Whether they're positive or not. So who's actually lacking role models? Because you don't see a whole lot of you see boys growing up in homes without fathers. They go to daycares without male care providers. They go to schools without male teachers, right? And so essentially all they have in their lives, a lot of these boys, is what they see on TV, those positive male role models that they see on TV and in movies and things like that, right? That's not an interaction. That's not an interaction with a male. That's just something on TV. That's a reasonable facsimile of a male role model. That's not a male role model, right? So who's really the gender who's in need of positive role models at early stages of life?
And this not only does this set of articles not include anything about role models for boys. It's very limiting in what a role model is. I had role models when I was growing up that were male, and I had role models that were female. I had positive role models, and I had examples of role models basically for this is what consequences look like.
Yeah, what not to do.
Yeah, what not to do with your life, what mistakes not to make. And this oversimplifies that so dramatically. And here's the other thing. Just because someone is a senator or a sportscaster or a doctor or an athlete, that doesn't necessarily make them a role model.
Yeah. And honestly, like, one of the things that I think that people could do, as far as boys, right? And giving them some pride in masculinity, even if they don't want to even if you don't want your boy to end up doing that, right? Is, next time you have to detour because there's some dude up in a cherry picker freaking in a windstorm cutting tree branches off that would otherwise fall on somebody's car, right? Instead of swearing, right, that you had to go a block out of your way to get around them, right? Point them out. Look at that guy up there. He's doing the work that it takes to, like, make all of our lives better, right? And I think that because so many of those men, those jobs that men do, they're not invisible, right? They're highly visible, but most people see them only when they are inconvenienced by them, right? So when the tow truck is in the way, blocking traffic, right? When the guy in the cherry picker is making you detour and making you a minute late for work or for lunch or whatever, right? To actually point out that, there are men out there, like Jordan Peterson says, there are men out there who go to jobs they hate every single day. And look at this miracle. There's light in here, and it's a building, and there's hot and cold running water, and like, you know, this is what it takes for society to run, right? And I think that in large part, we only notice those people who are mostly men when they get in our way, right? And we do not have any gratitude for them. And I think that a lot of boys would really feel better about themselves if the men that they're exposed to in their daily lives, on, you know, being driven to school and back by their mom and stuff like that, right? If they were hearing good things about those men. Look at that guy up there in the windstorm, you know, like, he must be pretty uncomfortable, but he's up there, you know, performing a valuable service. And yeah, I have to go around, but that's a small price to pay for not having tree branches falling on people, right? Like,
And just show them the video. Just show them Goodfellas video about, you know, Hurricane Sandy blowing all the useful women away. But one of my points on this is, like, just role models. Role model is a term, I think, that was kind of created to replace influences. People used to talk about people being a good influence or a bad influence on someone's life. I basically have explained to you guys tonight, because I keep talking about him, that one of my role models in life was male and younger than me. You know, I learned things about how to be a better person from my younger brother as he was growing up, and the way he learned. I watched him learn things, and I learned them with him because I saw what he figured out. And then, you know, he would talk to me and communicate things with me about what he'd learned, and I talked to him and communicated things with him about what I learned in life. And I may have been a role model for him as well, by the definition of the term role model. But he was probably a bigger role model for me than I was for him, because he matured faster than I did in terms of responsibility and accountability, a lot faster. And the idea that you have to go out and find role models for your kids is, if you have to reach for what's in a book or what's on television, or point out senators, sportscasters, doctors, and athletes, you personally, as a parent, you are surrounding yourself with the wrong people. If you can't look at someone in your family or yourself, your neighbors, if you're a church-going person, your minister, your elders at your church, I can't remember all the different names that people use for that, your students, your little students' teachers, and the administrators at the school, the people in your neighborhood, like they used to say on Sesame Street, the people that your kid already knows personally, and treat them as role models. You are surrounding yourself with the wrong person.
Okay, I'm going to get in here because I'm going to end it. This is ending now.
She's going to end it.
I'm ending it.
She's had enough.
I began this, and I'm ending it. And I wondered...
You brought us into this world, and she can take us out.
I brought this show in... Well, actually, Brian did. Brian gave birth to the show. It's his puppy. No, I guess...
He can tie it up in a sack and throw it in the river. Okay.
Yeah. Okay, but that... All right. That be what it may. When did we stop, like, seeing, for example, mothers being role models? Because it takes, like, we've talked a lot about how men construct society, but to be able to take a completely vulnerable creature and not project your shit onto it actually takes its own kind of strength.
Yep.
And and understanding.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something like why this is particular article. Why can't we look at that as being an aspect of strength, as being an aspect of constructing infrastructure in society? A person who is tasked with taking care of the most vulnerable members of our society and not fucking it up when it is so easy to fuck up. You know, that's and not all mothers. Kudos. I'm not going to say that. Yeah. But this framing doesn't allow those mothers who do deserve kudos to get those kudos as being role models for their children and for other people's children. I mean, why doesn't the grandma, the neighborhood grandma that Hannah was talking about, why can't she be a role model?
Yeah.
She was one of mine.
Yeah, like, why do role models always have to be positive and great and innovators, and and all of that? Why can't we respect people for doing the quiet work of not being assholes? And it's like the ability, and I know this sounds really weird, but or probably stupid, but when you are in a situation where you could project all of your worst impulses onto someone who cannot fight back, and you don't.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's what people should be doing. But I think that that's something that also should be lauded. But you not only don't do that, but you manage to control the darkest impulses of yourself, and you try to be the best person you can be. It's like it's a dark moment of the soul, and I think that deserves some respect.
Yeah.
And there's no respect for that. But I'm gonna end this.
Allison, you just gave a different version of yours was a why can't we, but you basically just gave a different version of the speech that my dad gave at my grandfather's funeral. My grandpa he was one of those role models where I talked about consequences and everything. He had some colossal struggles in his life, internal struggles in his life. And one of the ways in which my dad was a role model, and I think this is one of the reasons why I see you as a leader, you remind me of my dad in this way, is seeing past the struggles to the triumphs like that. Dad called it listening to our better angels. I know you wanted to finish, but that was something that I felt like really needed to be said. You just encompassed one of the things that I respect the most about my dad.
Mm-hmm. All right.
Yeah. So I was listening to you, but I was also reading about Brian giving birth in the chat.
Okay, but on that,
he's a trans doge, apparently.
It's probably best that you weren't really listening, because it was very, very hokey and kind of sappy and...
No, I caught some of it.
It was very sappy, but it still needed to be said.
All right. Well, thank you for saying. I'm sorry that I was distracted by the Futa Doge.
Well,
and the talk of Brian giving birth to puppies.
And did Hitler do anything wrong in the chat?
Probably.
Okay.
Probably.
Just wondering.
Okay, so we're gonna head into the after show now. We're gonna be heading into the after show.
I'm gonna mute myself because I'm gonna be cooking, because it's 8:11 p.m. and
you can chime in when you're able to. But so we're gonna be talking about the University of Sydney banning the red pill film because it has the capacity to physically threaten women. A film has the capacity to physically threaten women. Got to install that victim module, huh? All right. So if you're interested in joining us in the after chat for that, www.patreon.com/honeybadgerradio. Ryan, if you're being a Doge Futa or whatever, is it pronounced Futa?
Who the hell knows?